Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Right Path podcast, where being an author, an actual author, still matters. This is the podcast that's for authors. It's about authors. It's done by an author. Folks, this is where we come together and share our journeys. We explore our creativity, and most importantly, we examine the why behind it all. Our guest today, this guy's amazing. I've been had the opportunity to talk to him just a little bit behind the scenes, and I can't wait to hear more of the story. But after almost 4 decades as a journalist, this guy has put together a five-book, soon to be six, but shh, don't tell anybody, series that is just absolutely wonderful. And he's going to tell you all about it. The most recent book is Fatal Saving Grace. The newest one, maybe. Well, I'm not going to give you the title. We'll let him tell you about that. That's right. Please welcome to our show author Jim Nesbitt. Jim, how you doing, brother?
Well, I'm fine, and I appreciate you having me on board, and look forward to chopping up the red meat of writing and doing what we do.
Right on. I love that. Now, almost 4 decades as a journalist. I mean, as if that wasn't impressive enough. Now you've written five, going on six books. Did you start writing after you got done being a journalist, or was this something that started while you were still
No,
being doing that?
like a lot of guys, I had a couple of novels. We've been joined by my cat Max, so he'll wander in here sooner or later. Uh, like a lot of guys, I had couple of novels sitting in a drawer, just moldering away after, and then a friend of mine got started publishing his stuff, and I had a science writer who edited all five of these books, telling me, "Look, you need to get off your butt and self-publish." So I rewrote the first two from top to bottom in like 2015, and then kicked the first two out, and then I've been just cranking them out periodically ever since, while I was still working at the Tennessee Valley Authority. And now that I'm retired, I hope to be able to either up the output, or at least maintain. So I put out one a year or one every other year, at the very least.
Nice. Now you write these novels, at least so far, in cowboy noir is what I'm picking up. Is that the correct description?
That's what I've got, tug with. I think of these as hard-boiled, uh, uh, crime thrillers, and they're set in, Texas, and particularly West Texas, which is just this marvelous countryside of desert mountains, and so the mountains are sharp and spiky, and it looks like the bones of the earth are ripped open so you can see them. And it means that it makes it a perfect place for tales of revenge and redemption.
Nice. And you've got a consistent main character through these books, at least so far, and a private eye from Dallas named Ed Earl Burch.
Yeah, Ed Earl is a rascal. He's a defrock homicide detective, and he has been, for the last 20 years, you know, wandering in the peephole wilderness of a Seamus. Has a little niche specialty. It turns out he's pretty good at tracking down financial fugitives from the
Hmm.
savings and loan bust that racked, Dallas, Texas, and the Southwest during the 80s. And but it's work without honor. It's work without that higher sense of purpose and calling that he misses since he lost his shield. Uh, so that's where he at. He's kind of a train wreck of a character. He drinks too much, he smokes too much, and he seems to have a taste for women who like nothing better but to drive a sharp spear into his guts. But other than that, he's a fine American.
I was going to say, it sounds like a lot of guys I know
Yeah, yeah.
so far.
Well,
But
and that was my purpose in setting out. I wanted him to be more of an everyman, someone who'd been knocked around by life. I wanted somebody. He's not. he's not super sharp like Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe. He's not super cool like Frank Bullitt, Steve McQueen's character.
Hmm.
He's more dogged. Now he's I've heard one reviewer described him as nobody's hero but nobody's fool, and I think that's a good way to kind of summarize him. But he's more dogged and determined than he is brilliant. He won't have a sudden inductive or deductive flash that leads him to the killer. He's just going after what a murder cop really knows how to do, which is track down the people to talk to, track down the footprints of the quarry you've got, and just burn a lot of shoe leather and a lot of gasoline to get on the trail and stick to the trail of someone you're after.
Yeah. Now, if you had been a cop, I mean, then I'd be going, okay, are you this guy? But you were a journalist. So, I'm still going to ask, are you this guy? Is this
I
guy
get
a part of Jim?
Uh, yeah, there's certain resemblances, but I haven't killed anybody. I do like 45 automatics. Well, I haven't killed anybody yet.
Yet.
And I used to smoke Lucky Strikes and with a Zippo lighter, and I did work in Dallas. But like I do with my writing and research, I'm only a starting point. I've, given him his own persona, and it's based on not just me, but cops I knew back in the day, my fellow smart-ass journalists, people with, bad attitudes, bartenders I know, lawyers. So he's a composite, but I get accused of having an alter ego and engaging in Walter Mitty fantasy by having Ed Earl ramble around as an avenging angel.
Ah,
Hey, if you
okay.
buy the book, I don't care what you say.
I was going to ask that exact, I was going to use that exact word too. When you have a flawed character like this, I was wondering if there was like an Avenger, in him, where he's kind of getting back at, the bad guys on behalf of the regular guy.
Yeah, but I don't make him somebody who like the Punisher has got his own symbol and all that kind of
Right,
stuff. He's not a Marvel comic character,
right.
and he's real as a dime. He's just uh, got his own code, and that he often forgets to follow, particularly if he's tempted by money, women, and uh, other forms of entertainment and allure.
Mhm.
But when the chips are down and when it's it's that time to step up, he snaps to and remembers who he is and what course he has to follow.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, I mean, I love the character. Everything I've read about him so far, and I love what you're doing here. Now you've done 5 books on this, but the sixth one is about this detective, or it may not be. How much do you
Uh,
want to
I,
share with the public?
well, what I'm doing right now is doing the promotion game on this one, and when dies down, I'll turn to and either pick up another Ed Earl book to write. I've got two of them kind of thumbnail sketches for two more that I'd like to do. Or I was in the process of writing a Western set in the 1920s during the in a Texas oil boom town.
Mhm.
And I thought since I get accused of writing thinly disguised Westerns anyway, I thought I'd give it a try and write one that's a self-declared Western. So, uh,
Gotcha. I love that. Now you've
so
been a journalist for almost 4 decades, and
yeah,
you and I talked off air about back when you were doing it. It was almost back in the day when you had long form journalism, which I loved that expression because you actually get to tell stories. It's not just who
yes,
can put up what clickbait, like we have
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
But how do you go from um, doing the study and the research and getting behind it and trying to get the truth out and telling the nonfiction of journalism, and how do you launch then into pure fiction of this character and these stories and that type of thing? What made you want to make that switch?
I'm a lifelong, you know, Raymond Chandler junkie, Dashiell Hammett, James M. Cain. I read the kind of the founding fathers of the American hardboiled school of crime fiction, whether you want to call it noir, which has so many definitions, and I'm not quite sure what that means, but I tend to call my books hardboiled crime thrillers because they're not whodunits. You kind of know who all the characters are and the players, and who the good guys are and the bad guys. And by the way, the good guys aren't all that good. So, um, that when I finally decided to make the leap and try my hand at fiction writing, it should be no surprise, or it was no surprise to anybody who knew me, that I'd try hard-boiled crime fiction.
Gotcha.
And I think that career in journalism set me up for that because having been somebody who was kind of a takeout artist, as we'd call it in the trade, the guy who did the long Sunday reader that you'd sit over a cup of coffee and it'd be about some event that was happening, let's say grazing rights out west, or wildfire policy or whatever. I'd go into where this is happening hot and heavy, find the people that are getting swept up in this story, and do you a long reader that used a lot of the fiction devices that you usually use to write fiction. So it wasn't
Hmm.
that I was already using those tools of the trade. So, and I come from a long line of hillbilly storytellers. So it's kind of in the blood.
I gotcha. I gotcha. All right, I love that. Now you mentioned Raymond Chandler, and he's the author of the Philip Marlowe. So, but then you mentioned your guy's
Yes.
not like Philip Marlowe. How are they different?
I set out, I didn't want somebody who was super sharp like Marlowe or Sam Spade, Hammett's character.
Right.
And I didn't want somebody super cool, and I damn sure didn't want a Marvel comic book character. So, in
Right.
fact, the Marvel phenomenon hadn't taken place yet when I was, starting out writing these guys. I wanted an everyman. I wanted somebody that people could more readily identify with. I wanted somebody who'd been knocked around by life and was more dogged and determined with kind of a root sense of right and wrong. I said it follows a code. Well, he's been known to wander and particularly get off track because of money or women or other forms of entertainment. But at heart, and when the chips are down, he's a guy that returns to that, those basics of who he is and what he thinks is right and wrong.
That's interesting. All right, now let me ask you a little bit about your writing style, because I know we talked about that just a little bit beforehand too. There's a lot of folks who are very structured with it, and they say, "Hey, I'm gonna, every hour or every day, I'm gonna set aside this time frame. I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna write 1,000 words, whatever it is." Some folks are like, "Hey, whenever the mood hits me, I'm good to go." Some people map it all out forever. You seem to have a little more of a sort of a loose, whatever comes to you style. But I'm curious, how do you go about writing these things?
I do a little bit of organization, but I'm basically a fly by the seat of the pants guy,
Really?
pantster, pantser, or whatever. So, I mean, I will start out, particularly as I'm getting a little older, so I'll remember things that I think of. Wow, what was that brilliant idea I had 3 weeks ago? Um, but uh, and I'll do character sketches and that kind of thing. But once I kind of put the notes down about what I've been thinking about before starting, I'll throw that in a drawer and start writing. And yeah, I might occasionally pull it out, to remind myself of a couple of points I want to make, and or just to see where the story is tracking versus where I thought it should go. And but it's basically fly by the seat of the pants. And I think the advantage of that is, you, you know, there and I'm sure you've had this happen too, where you bang out a riff and it's really sparkling, and you have no idea where the hell that came from. I mean, you didn't do it. It just kind of came through you and popped up, and there it is. Well, I don't want that, spontaneous. That's not necessarily from my brain pan. To be over organization and an outline. I'd rather risk writing my way into a blind corner and having to write my way out, which I think is sometimes very much a fun thing to do, than kill off that chance at incandescence that I'd be proud to call my own, even though I know it isn't. It just came from somewhere. The writing gods bestowed it upon me, and I'm going to take it and run like a thief.
So in a lot of ways, these stories are kind of living and breathing and sort of coming from you in real time.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, um, the scenes that I describe, and by the way, I'm a firm believer in writing scenes that are so vivid that they become a character unto themselves.
Hmm.
Because when I was a journalist, it always fascinated me going someplace to watch people trying to work the land as the land was working them and how it shaped them. And uh, the if I'm describing like the world's sixth largest bat cave in Mason, Texas, which is in the hill country, well, you can be sure I've probably been calf deep in bat guano myself. So I think there's nothing like walking the ground and being able to describe it, something that you've actually seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, with 4 decades of journalism behind you, I got to wonder the stories themselves, the protagonists, the bad guys, the plots, that type of thing. Is this coming in part from some real life, that you've brought from your 4 decades of journalism, or are you, making those things up as you go too?
Both, I think well, I'm a firm believer that the more facts you have, facts are your friends, and the firmer the foundation for your writing, and counterintuitively, the freer your writing becomes. We're writing fiction, so as long as it's rooted in fact and authenticity, you know you there's things that you make up. You make up the characters, you make up you may make up the MacGuffin that people are chasing. You may make up the particulars of chasing a serial killer, but it's rooted in knocking around, knowing cops, having covered murder trials in state court for years, chasing stories about somebody on a murder spree that is ongoing, and they're pursuing them. That but that will inform what I'm writing about. But I'll take it in a different direction and try to make it my own.
Nice, nice. How much research do you end up having to do, on these topics, or are you pretty much writing from things that you have a good frame of reference on?
I do a lot of research. I'm not scientific. I don't hit the library as much, but I'll order a bunch of books and I'll read. For example, I mentioned the Western I may take up writing. I had to learn about the Texas oil boom of the 20s and 30s and read about boom towns that were wild and woolly and how those were tamed and and it was tough for me to write the first 7 or 8 chapters of that book um, because it was new turf for me.
Hmm.
So it wasn't as smooth. Oh, I know this, and you just kind of start banging away. I had to stop and start again, and look at the stuff I'd read to make sure I was getting it right, and but gradually it becomes you. You internalize this stuff, and you make some fits and starts, and then you finally find a groove to get in. Now, the trick is I put this thing down to publish this latest book, and let's see whether I can pick up the Western and find that groove again. That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. There you go. Well, we got to have those challenges, right? That's what keeps all this interesting.
It keeps me off the streets, brother. I mean, it's either that or I start, robbing liquor stores, one or the other.
Okay, we don't want that to happen. All right, I love it. So
No, and I don't think my wife would like that either.
probably not. Let me ask you when I've written before, and I know a lot of folks that I've talked to kind of feel this way, but when you're writing a book, you are very often writing while you're writing to someone or with someone in mind or for someone. Maybe it's your target market, maybe it's someone you know personally, maybe it's for you. But I'm curious, who do you write these books to or for?
I think it's kind of schizophrenic. I'm writing for myself because I'm an egotistical bastard, and I'm writing for uh, people who I know are out there reading it, and I don't do it in a kind of calculated way, but just let me tell a story. And I know there are people out there, I've met them, and I may even think about one or two that I've met, but I want to write in kind of for the reader as much as I write for myself. If I like it, then chances are the readers will like it because I've got that experience that my small legion of rabid fans do like Ed Earl, and they will call me up and ask me, "Are you going to put Carla Sue Cantrell in this book?" Which is a kind of a secondary character that everybody seems to love, probably more than they love Ed Earl. She's a she's a wild and crazy blonde who loves to rip off, drug dealers and crime lords, and she and Ed Earl are they're almost one and one A in a horse race. They have helped define each other through two or three of these books.
Wow,
And she's an example of someone just leaping out of the typewriter and taking over the book. I meant her as a plot device in the first novel and move Ed Earl from point A to point B, and she just took over, and I was amazed at what came out uh, under her name. So
that's incredible. So you put a lot of time into your characters.
yeah, I don't think there's any such thing as a throwaway character. Or I think you give a backstory and some description to all your characters. Otherwise, you got a bunch of stick figures around two or three well-developed characters, and that's kind of flimsy. I mean, it's the same thing that I feel about writing, vivid scenes, because, if you don't, and I think too many writers do this, you wind up with what looks like a flat in the back of a theater stage. It's just it's one dimensional, and you want something that gives texture and depth as much as you can in writing on the printed page. So
Yeah.
that's my that's my gospel, and I'm gonna keep preaching it for a long time.
So we've talked a little bit about scenes and settings. We talked about characters, but I know that one of the things you told me off air was about how important dialogue is in terms of the overall scheme of things. You put a
Yep.
ton into your dialogue. Tell us about that.
Well, I think it's essential, and I think it's one of the primary drivers. We talked earlier about Raymond Chandler. I mean, Chandler and some of the other founding fathers. It was you know character description and snappy dialogue and lots of action. That's what drives the story, and I'm a firm believer in that. I think your both your internal and external dialogue, it's another way to show who the characters are without telling people. If you
Mm.
read the late great George V. Higgins, he wrote The Friends of Eddie Coyle and At End of Day, wrote about the Boston mob probably better than anybody. And his stories, I mean, they're a chore to read because he doesn't believe in quotation marks. He doesn't believe in he said, she said. You're plunged into reading what looks like a transcript from a conversation that's ongoing and you just walked in on. Once you figure out that's what his game is, then okay, and you start picking up on it and get into it. But that's rather extreme. I tend to help my readers out, but I do believe his point is that it's all dialogue. In a sense. I mean, I'm telling you, but I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to you by writing it out, on my laptop. And my characters are talking to each other, and sometimes Ed Earl gets his dead partner whispering in his ear, and they have a conversation. So I think that just shows who these people are a lot better than just me telling people who they are.
That's amazing. I really haven't I haven't had a chance to talk to too many folks about dialogue, so I've been eager to kind of get into that with you a little bit. Is this something that you've always focused on, like all the way back at the beginning of your writing career in book one,
Yeah,
or is this something that maybe came along?
it's something I've always been a believer in. And back in my journalism days, you lived for finding that quote, that the voice of somebody in the middle of a story that gives it life. And to me, I tell people, used to tell young journalists, quotes are like paprika. They should be short and snappy and should kind of, roll up your tongue like an old window shade. But they shouldn't go on and on. They should never have numbers in them. You shouldn't be doing math. They're the spice and and to mix a metaphor, the hammer that drives home the point you're making in your narrative. Well, I think in fiction, it's you're using dialogue to define your characters and drive the action and tell a little bit of the story, uh, probably more a something to hammer home the point of the story, uh, in a way that somebody reading that dialogue goes, "Oh yeah, that's what he meant earlier," and it fills in the gaps and holes, as you're going along.
Nice. How have you and Ed Earl both kind of changed from, book one to now book five?
Well, what I did in this book was it was something a writer buddy of mine, Dick Belsky, who writes really snappy, fast copy mysteries, usually featuring a reporter, print reporter back in the day. Now he writes his character is Claire Carlson. He interviewed Michael Connelly for one of the mystery magazines, probably last year, and Connolly was talking about how he aged Harry Bosch, and and that really interested me. So Ed Earl's getting a little longer in the tooth. He's in his probably mid 50s now, um, and so I thought, well, how can I age him up and show change without making him a poster child for Geritol? So I give him a few more maladies. He thought he shot a guy. He's chasing a serial killer that he thought he killed, several years earlier. And now he's finding out the guy's alive and is after him and a woman he has saved from the cartels previously. And he realizes, man, I emptied a full clip into that guy. How did how's he still alive? And he realizes, well, maybe I'm not as good a shot as I used to be. You know, it's things like that kind of bring him along. More aches and pains. He moves slower. So it was kind of interesting to kind of age him up without going overboard I mean, he's still a guy that, can swing a mean punch and take one as well. But he may be just a little bit slower about it these days.
Yeah, it happens to us all at some point. We all get a little slower
Uh,
about it.
yeah,
So
I gave him a few more of my maladies, so you know that's he can say thank you anytime he wants to.
there you go. That was my next question on the follow-up was, okay, now that's Ed Earl. But how has Jim Nesbitt changed in his approach, in his priorities, and how he approaches the writing? How has Jim changed from book one to book five?
I think I think others are a better judge of that than I am. I get told by, my faithful beta readers that, yeah, you're writing a lot differently and smoother writing. You're less. I used to be real staccato and kind of frenetic, and I think my writing is matured, and I've still got a lot of juice and an ability to tell a lively and raucous and raunchy tale. But the way I tell it, I think, has gotten uh, smoother, and I'm not afraid of writing a long paragraph anymore. And I think it still works. I mean, I enjoy writing Ed Earl, and people seem to still enjoy reading him. So I can't have changed that much. Um,
Good to
but
know.
I started to send you a photo of back when I was running a alt weekly in St. Louis, and I still have black in my beard, and it's like, yeah. Well, I look in the mirror now, and all that's gone, so it's all white, and my knees, even though they're both bionic, and I had triple bypass surgery 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So, yeah, I'm getting old.
Oh my goodness. I mean, wow. Well, I'm glad that you seem a lot better.
I feel a lot better. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay. Good.
I've dropped a bunch of weight, and feel fine, and I've got books I want to write, and and I'll keep writing until they you know take me to that dirt nap with Elvis.
All right. The dirt nap with Elvis. All right. Yeah, see, I see an awful lot of Ed Earl in you, when you and I are sitting here talking. But I get it. I really do. You mentioned self-publishing earlier when you and I were talking. Now, are all the books self-published?
They are. I had a 3 book contract earlier this year with an outfit which will remain nameless because they wound up being, oh, I think I'll refrain from saying what I think they really are, but they
Okay.
weren't they they weren't people I wanted to continue working with, and it wasted about 7 months of my time. But
Oof.
um, so I just went back to, I had a book in the can, this one, the 5th book, and I just said, well, screw it. I'm done waiting on you guys and done messing with you. I'm going to take the rights back and self-publish. I know how to do that.
Mhm.
I like it. Now, am I going to make a lot of money doing it? No, but I control it, and I'm at the age where it's more important to me uh, to see my books on the shelf with my name and the title in the spine. And if someone wants to pay me a lot of money, of course I'll take it, but that's not what drives me. I'm a storyteller. I'm going to keep telling stories until I kick the bucket.
Nice. I love that you brought that up too, because so many of us, get into it and we're thinking, oh, we're going to get rich doing this, right? Because we have no idea, what's really going to happen. But when I mean, this is your fifth one. You got a sixth one coming out. You're self-publishing. You're working hard at these. Why do you keep putting them out? What is it you hope to accomplish? What does this do for you to get these out there?
It's in my blood and in my DNA. It's just I'm a storyteller.
Uh,
I'm actually going back to the roots of my father and mother and grandparents. in the mountains outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I grew up listening to all these tales, and you know, it, I ate it up as a kid, and I internalized it, and was always reading, and I started writing as a young, elementary school kid, and never stopped. So um, I can't help myself, man. If if I stopped writing, the pressure would get so much big that I'd probably have an aneurysm if it didn't. You gotta let it out, man.
Right
Gotta
on.
let it out.
Right on. We talked about just a minute ago about how, some of us think certain things when we get into this whole process. What was the biggest surprise or the biggest letdown, from you from I'm gonna write a book, here I am, I'm a journalist, I'm gonna get this book written, and it's gonna get out,
Yeah.
to where you are today in terms of like what you've been through, what you've learned.
The writing is still a gas to me. The storytelling is still the essence, and it's what I love. Uh, all the other stuff, the marketing, the salesmanship, all that, uh, that's been and the result, the amount of effort you put in versus the return. Those are the kind of things that have been disappointing to me. Uh, Now something like this I love because I love to talk about writing, and I love to talk about tradecraft, and particularly with somebody who's knowledgeable about it like yourself, and
Nice.
kind of go back and forth and banter. That's a kick because it gets me out of my lone wolf
Mm,
hovel and that we writers get into. And I feel the same way about going out and selling a book at a live event. That's a kick
yeah.
because you're meeting and talking to people. But the marketeering and everything like that, yeah, you got to do it. But I don't particularly like it.
Well, sure. Now, 5 books in, granted, being a guest on a podcast, fantastic way to, get the word out.
Yeah.
And I recommend more people do that. But especially here at the right path, give me a call. We'll see if we can have you on. I mean,
You're in the Rolodex now, brother.
there you
So
go.
and it's funny because I have been trying to up that game and try new things and do different things than what I you know been doing on the earlier books and it's like when the internet first hit journalism. It's just it's another way to tell stories. It's another way to get your story out. So why not do it? You need content to be mercenary about it, and I need someone to get my name out there. And it helps that we both talk the same language and can put on a good show.
I love
Uh,
that. To be mercenary about it. That's awesome. We talked about, how when you self-publish, the marketing's all on you. And you've talked
yeah.
about, marketing and how that's not your favorite thing. I'm curious, how have you marketed? And did you find anything that worked well for you in this particular genre of book, or anything that maybe was a total disaster you want to share with anybody to stay away from?
It changes, once when you think you've got a set go-to actions in your
Mhm.
game, you find the market's changed, the algorithms have changed, and you've got to do something different.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I previously, used to sell a lot by, buying Amazon ads. But that kind of fell off, and now, it's like I find live events and getting my name out on a podcast, might be more effective. I'm going to be trying, um, as a friend calls it, you need to, be selling your books at gun adjacent and cigar adjacent venues, and start thinking about something other than a book festival, and uh, this is Carmen Amato, who's a great writer, writes the Amelia Cruz detective mysteries. Amelia is the only female homicide detective in Acapulco. So, but Carmen is much more learned and much more accomplished about the ins and outs of marketing than I am. So I sit at her feet and take all the pearls of wisdom she's willing to give me.
Amen, right? All right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Are there a lot of murders in Acapulco? What do you think?
Yeah, kind of. In her books. I mean, she's a marvelous writer. You should have her on the show. I'll refer her to you.
Love
Uh,
it.
but uh, she's good, and she covers that kind of schizophrenia between the glitz of Acapulco and the horrendous violence, and it makes for a uh, very jazzy and high energy book. So
Wow. All right. Good deal. Appreciate the referral. I'll take
Carmen,
those
by the way,
anytime.
she'll pay me. Well, I don't know. Maybe pay me with a drink next time we see each other at a conference. So,
Right on. Hey, trading that works in our world, right?
exactly,
You got
exactly.
it. Networking is what it is. I love that. The all right, so you've got the five down. You've got six coming. We've talked about your journey a little bit here, um, and I love what you've done with the character, and I love the idea behind the dialogue. Um, do you find that you're unique in this particular subject matter, or do you find like you've got a lot of competition in this particular area with, guys who are hard-boiled crime thrillers today? I'm just curious if that's like how big that is.
There are a few guys that I know about that, and I'm desperately trying to think of it's J. Scott something or other, and I can't think of his name, but he writes The Far Empty, and he kind of walks some of the same ground that I do. And then the late great James Crumley, who is another writing god of mine, uh, wrote Border Snakes and The Last Good Kiss and Dancing Bear. And he's the writer that taught me that wretched excess in terms of sex, drugs, and violence is fine for a book. So, uh,
I
but
guess
yeah, I
whatever
mean,
sells, right?
they're and it's kind of the point where they're now calling books similar to mine rural noir, whatever that means. I've gotten hit with cowboy noir, so I can understand that a little bit better. So,
Yeah,
uh, they may be walking the same turf, but nobody walks it like I walk it. So
there you go.
I'm that arrogant to think my stories are better, if not far superior to what these other guys are putting out.
I love
I'll
that.
be I'll be that egotistical.
I'll take that. I really will because, as an author, I think you have to really believe in yourself and really believe in what you're writing and believe in your characters and what you're doing in order to go through all of the thankless work that it takes to put out a book, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said talent without ego is worthless. You know,
I like that. I might steal that if that's all right.
It's been stolen before, so go ahead.
Okay.
Have at it.
There you go. No, I think a little hubris is a good thing, especially in this industry. So, um, in your whole journey here, from back when you were, being a journalist to today, and we're talking, five books, sixth on the way. What's been the biggest challenge for you in getting to where you are?
I can't think of one big thing. It's all, you know, challenge after challenge on different fronts, and it's, you know, strapping your pistols on and going after it. And that's the way I was raised, and it's the way I was as a journalist, and the way I continue to do as a writer. You just have to get up every day and go after and write it. Um, and
Nice.
it's not one big thing. I mean, I'm disappointed that the book contract fell through with the publisher who will never be named. But I'm, you know,
Gotcha.
so what? You still have to wake up every day and write. So that's what I choose to do. Otherwise, you just wind up sitting in a recliner waiting for that final call.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no life. I'm with you 100%. That's why you write. That's why I do this. So we're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're
I mean, you
yeah,
have callings and you have things that fulfill the soul and that kind of makes your day brighter and more lively. And so you need to pursue those things. You know, it's life, and it's how I've lived for a long time, and I'll continue to live.
nice. Nice. Totally agree with you. 100%. I still have one more question for you, but before I get to that, let me I want to make sure I don't miss this. And we'll have it in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to reach out, learn more about Jim Nesbitt, and of course about Ed Earl Burch?
You can reach me at www.jimnesbittbooks.com. That's the website. And You can also reach me on my Amazon page. Let's see if I can remember that. https:// www.amazon.com/author/Jim Nesbitt.
Wow.
And
All right.
those are two of the best ways to find out what I'm up to. I'm also on Substack, so it's you can go to Substack and look up Ed Earl 56. I guess it's the at sign Ed Earl 56. And I've been trying to figure out whether which is better, to have a newsletter in my website or do the Substack thing. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But I'm again trying to get modern,
Yeah, there you
keep
go.
things try
Eh,
an old dog getting you learning a new trick.
Nice. Nice, nice. I got you. All right, let me hit you with our last question here because we have a lot of aspiring authors that are out there who listen to this program. You and I talked about it briefly, but we also have a lot of authors, who have published a book maybe, and are trying to maybe get better, get their second book out. So we have a lot of folks in the learning process who would love to be sitting here having published five successful books and, moving on to number six. What's your best piece of advice for the authors who are earlier on in their journey and are not quite where you are yet?
Well, my first bit of advice is, you need to smack the hell out of anybody that comes up to you and says, write what you know. They're giving you really kind of a bum steer because that's barely the threshold. You need to start with what you know and then learn more. Research, research, research. Facts are your friends. Get out there and experience things and be able to write something that is rooted in something you've experienced or you've learned about. And the reason you do that is you create a much firmer foundation for your writing,
Hmm,
and it's a foundation that counterintuitively makes your writing freer and better able to fly.
nice.
So that's what I tell younger writers. The other thing is there ain't no magic bullet. You just got to sit your butt in a chair and write. And some days it flows, and other days it's like taking one of those little rock hammers going after a wall of granite. But you just have to keep at it. We talked earlier about I'm not a plotter, and I don't keep to a schedule, but I know I have to have my butt in the chair, you know, 2 to 3 days a week, and burn up one of the weekend days, and just and keep at it. And I know when I'm dogging it, and when I need to kick myself in the butt, and open up the laptop and start writing. So uh, those are the two things I tell people.
That's great advice, brother. It really is. I appreciate you sharing that too, on top of everything else you have. And you've given a lot of other advice in this program up until that point. So I appreciate you digging deep on that one and giving me one more thing out of your pocket because I know you had a couple saved up.
Well, and if you don't stop me, I'll sit here all night saying this stuff. So it's you have to kick me out. It's like the last drunk in the bar. Let's come on, Jim. We got to close up.
I got you. All right. Well, I appreciate you hanging with us until last call, brother. So, we're going to go ahead and wrap, folks. The I tell you what, the author of the 5 books so far, sixth on the way, about our awesome character Ed Earl Burch, and the most recent one, Fatal Saving Grace, is out now. Go find it. New one coming soon. And folks, author Jim Nesbitt. Jim, you've been amazing, absolutely amazing. And I love how you shared everything with us. Thank you so much for being on here, brother.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a blast, and it's always a pleasure, batting back and forth with someone who knows what they're talking about. So I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you so much. All right, folks, that's been another just absolutely fantastic episode of the Right Path podcast, where the truth still matters and words still have power. This is the place for authors who know that every page is a step forward. So let's lift each other up, let's dust each other off, and let's all move forward together.